Hey homeschool friends, welcome to the video. In today's video, I'm going to talk about audiobooks. I'm going to talk about the fact that my kids love audiobooks, especially my 7-year-old and 8-year-old. They could listen to them all day. They have easily listened to more than hundreds and hundreds of audiobooks, and they tend to listen to their favorites over and over and over. And so I'm going to talk about some tips for you if you are interested in getting your kids more into audiobooks. If you're interested in them loving that way of reading, please stay tuned because I have some great tips, and also at the end I'm going to recommend some of our favorite audiobooks, or at least what my kids have said are their favorites. So stay tuned. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel if you're new here, or welcome back if you've been coming for a while. Like I said, we're going to talk about audiobooks today, mostly about tips for how to use them. And I am so excited to share this with you guys because I love the fact that my kids love audiobooks. I feel like I really want my kids to be readers. And if I haven't said this already, I have a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, and then twin 4-year-olds. And so my kids are definitely on the cusp of reading themselves. Like my 8-year-old has recently taken off with reading. My 7-year-old is right behind him. So they are about to be more independent. But honestly, it's still a lot of work for them, and they would much rather the story just be told to them and read out loud to them, either by me, but also by audiobooks. And so they have been a large part of our life for a long time. And so I have learned some things. I have some tips. I have some ideas in case this is something that you also want your kids to get into, because I really do think that this is just a gateway to them becoming readers themselves, just to love stories and always want to have stories going in their lives. And it's nice because it's just not as hard as learning how to read. And so let's hop in. Let me just start talking about my tips. So I'd say my first tip would be to start early. There is no reason why your kids can't listen to audiobooks if they're about at the stage where you're starting to think about reading chapter books to them. So I'm talking like 4 or 5 years old. You're really kind of entering into seeing if they could sit down for longer amounts of time to listen to you read to them. That's also a great time to start them on audiobooks to see if they will be more interested in listening to the story. Now, I would say 4 years old is a little young for independent audiobook usage, but you could kind of start working your way that way with the younger kids. But I'd say by the time my kids were 6, they were very much into audiobooks. The next thing I would recommend is to pick books in series. This is the best. So if you find a book, either you read it aloud to them. This is where we found a lot of our books, is they started as read alouds, but they're the first book in a series. I'll read it with them, we'll enjoy it, and then we will look for audiobooks. First, I will look for the book I just read out loud to them because they often like to re-listen to the books. But also, if it's a series, that's perfect because then they will just fly through all the rest of the books in the series, and they already know the characters, they're already invested, they already want to know more. And so book series are perfect for if you want to start to get your kids more into audiobooks. Okay, my next tip, I would say hear me out on this, but it is to give them their own device. For instance, my son has an old iPhone and my daughter has an old iPad. And we use those devices only for audiobooks. My husband set it all up. We took off all the apps. We took off anything that could access the internet off of their devices. So these are only for audiobooks. And we have set rules around that and let them know that this is strictly what that is for. But we have definitely set up those devices so that they can't get to anything else, if you will. And what I like about the fact that they have their own device is that they can listen to them during quiet time, which is typically when my kids do listen to all their audiobooks, is they're playing with Legos or they're drawing or what have you, and they are constantly listening to stories. And I feel like it makes their quiet time more enjoyable. It makes them want to stay longer in quiet time, which is great for them and good for our family just to have that breather, that rest time during the afternoon. And audiobooks really help with that. So the only apps on the phone are the apps for the library because we do not pay for audiobooks. I won't do that. We only use library apps, and I do live in a bigger city, so it is nice. So the kids have a lot of access to a number of different books, a number of different platforms that they can use to look for books they want. And I allow them to do this, which brings me into my second point is I allow them to do it on my library card. So it's not like I get them a separate one. At some point I probably will, but I like the fact that at these ages they're on my card, because all I have to do is open up the app on my phone and see what they have been requesting. And if anything is like, oh no, that's not what I want you guys to be listening to, then I can talk to them about it. But honestly, they just don't know enough to go searching for it. My son, my oldest, will typically go to our bookshelves and start searching all the different titles of the books we already own to start kind of down those paths. Like for instance, Boxcar Children. My gosh, there's like 150 Boxcar Children, right? And a lot of them are on audiobook. And so he'll just search that, and then he'll see that he has all these different book options that he can start listening to. And so we do give them a little bit of responsibility, but it's very much tied to my account, so I can check them and make sure nothing is going on. And actually nothing has been going on. I have never gotten on there and been like, oh my gosh, why did you download this audiobook? They just haven't done that at these ages. I'm sure they will eventually, but as for right now, it works really, really well. Another thing that helps with audiobook listening is to really model it. So I'm a book reader, obviously. I mean, I love books. I have lots of books that are my personal reading books. And I model audiobook reading because I'll often listen to audiobooks when I'm cooking, or we'll even get a puzzle out and I'll have my son bring his audiobook and we'll listen to like Harry Potter together. We'll do something really fun like that. So I'm modeling that kind of behavior, and so then it is really easy for them to see the times in their life when they could turn on an audiobook, when it is very helpful and beneficial to them. Like for instance, the kids started using audiobooks in the car, which is great. I mean, you do have to download. Like for instance, we have a long drive every summer to go visit my family, and a lot of that is through areas that don't have a ton of cell service. But if you download the audiobooks ahead of time, you'll be just fine. But what I love is that my son and daughter will often listen to audiobooks at the same time, because I bought a little splitter for the iPhone, and so you can plug two headphones in to the same device, and so then they can listen to it together, and it's just less TV watching or movie watching on those big long trips, and it's nice. They really like that, and they get to kind of chat about it and get excited about the same parts of the book, which I just love. And another tip I have written down, actually I already mentioned this, but I'll re-mention it, is to download previous read aloud books. So that's just a good place to start for getting them excited about audiobooks, because they already know they like the story. So they're not getting into something they don't know what's coming, like which might cause some anxiety, but they're already excited about the characters. So it just works really well, or it has for my kids. And the last tip before I give you some recommendations is to find audiobooks for early readers or beginner chapter books. Now, why this is an awesome tip is because it is helpful for them as they're transitioning into becoming readers, independent readers, physical book readers themselves, is to have some of the stories already in their head. Like for example, my son loves these books. So they're Dragon Master books from Branches. It's a scholastic group of books, but he listened to these on audiobook first. And they had all 20 of them on audiobook. So he would listen to them, and now he has the whole set. Like he bought these with his own money that he used from mowing the lawn to buy his own copies of those, and he is so much more comfortable reading them because he has previously listened to them. So he already knows the story enough that he's able to kind of not guess the words. I guess you would call it an educated guess of the words he doesn't know, because he understands the story. And so the whole thing is a lot more enjoyable for him. And on the flip side, it makes him much more confident in his independent reading. So as he is moving to more physical books, reading on his own, he feels more confident. He feels like he can do it because he spent a decent amount of time listening to these books on audio prior to attempting to picking them up himself. So that is just one of my favorite tips for that kind of transition period of a new reader. So those are my tips for audiobooks. We love them. We love audiobooks around here. And as for some quick book recommendations, or ones that my kids have loved listening to, again, a lot of these are because they were on our shelves, so I'm just going to show you the physical copy. So we love these books. Half Magic by Edward Egger. These are older books, but there are a number of them in the series, and so this first one we read aloud, loved it, and then the kids kept going with that series. Same with this one. So this is Poppy. Actually, I think this is the second book in the series, but we love these. There's also Ragwood, Poppy and Ragwood, Poppy's Return. They're about a little mouse and this owl in the woods that's super scary. They're super cute. And then, oh, I loved this book. So The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street. This is a great one for Christmas time. We probably read it a little too early because they didn't connect as much with the characters who were more like 11, 9, something like that. We read it when they were a little bit younger, but they have gone on and listened to all of these on repeat because they just love the characters so much, especially my son, really attached to the boy in the family. So we love those. And then here's a recent one for my son. So I wouldn't say this is one to do with like a 5 or 6-year-old by any means. My almost 9-year-old has recently picked these up and they're wonderful. There's some more violence, but it is all animals. So take this recommendation as you will, but it's the Warrior series and this is the first one, Into the Wild. It is by Aaron Hunter and there are tons of these books. And my son is slowly working his way through them and just loving them. So he wanted to make sure I mentioned that one. So we loved this book as a read aloud, The Wild Robot, and then there's The Wild Robot Returns, both by Peter Brown. They're really good. They're really fun read alouds, but also to listen to on audiobook. So like I said, Boxcar Children, I already mentioned this. This is actually probably one of my favorites to get the kids into because they're very wholesome and there's a ton of them. Along with Magic Tree House ones, my kids have also listened to a lot of Magic Tree House on audio. They're definitely capable of reading them, or at least my son is, but they like to listen to them on audio. And here's a book from my daughter. Oh my gosh, she listened to these over and over and over. So this is The Frog Princess by E.D. Baker. And there is maybe 7 in the series about this princess and this frog. And oh my gosh, that's so much fun. She loved them. And she will occasionally go back and just re-listen to the entire series again. Another one, the Narnia series. So my kids love these books. I read this first one out loud, which this is a great copy because it kind of has the colored pictures. Oh, I love this version. But all of the Narnia books my kids have listened to on audio. Next is the Harry Potter series. So I got these fun covers. I am a huge Harry Potter lover. We've been reading one book per summer just to kind of not let it get too scary for them. We have been reading the illustrated copies, but they have been listening to the books after we have read them because these are definitely not within their scope to read themselves. Actually, most of these books my kids can't read themselves. They cannot read the Narnia books yet, but they absolutely love listening to them. Okay, so my daughter is currently listening to a ton of these. So it's Mary Poppins by P.L. Travers, and I'm not sure if he also wrote the rest of the series or what, but she found a ton of these books on the Libby app. And then my son has recently found these, so the I Survive books. He's been reading himself. He really likes the graphic novel version, but he also likes listening to them on audio, and I picked up a bunch of these because he can pretty much read them himself. So it's another example of him listening to it as well as reading it physically. And then here's 2 that my son gave me to say I should mention because he loved listening to these and he listened to them on repeat as well. So The Terrible Two, this is by Mac Barnett and Joy John, and I think there's some extras. Yeah, The Terrible Two Gets Worse. He really enjoyed them. He's an 8-year-old boy, as well as this, The House of Robots by James Patterson. Both of these he really enjoyed the audiobook, and we'll go back and listen to them over and over again as well. So that's just a lot of the books that my kids have loved on audio, and I hope this has encouraged you. I hope this has sparked some interest to maybe have you pick up more audiobooks for your kids or for yourself for that matter, but I hope it was helpful. And if it was, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel if you want to, and otherwise guys, I'll see you in the next homeschool video. All right, take care.